Hello everybody, Mr. E from Art with Mr. E, and today we are going to be making these little stuffies. Now if you've made ugly dolls or other kind of stuffies in your classroom, same idea except for this is smaller, more manageable, and you could probably do it in 2 class times if you have 45 minutes to an hour class. Now, the base for this are Smart Fab circles that I purchased from Blick. They come in a pack of, I think, 100. And this is Smart Fab. Smart Fab's great if you've never used it before. It's a non-woven fabric. However, you can tell by looking at this, it is very see-through-y. So when you're stuffing them, you're not going to want to use printed bags if you like using recycled materials. Polyfill works great. Tissues work great. But just be aware, they're very see-through. The reason I like them though is that they are very easy to pierce because they are non-woven. There's Smart Fab and there's another brand called Ollie. Ollie works really well too. Now, your students probably have little to no background in sewing, so you're gonna have to teach them things from scratch. Let's start with our needles. Now I'm using a thicker, this is like an upholstery needle. It's pretty thick, it's not sharp at all in the end. That is a plus and a minus. It's easier to get through fabric if there is a point. There are these plastic needles. They do have more of a point. However, plastic needles bend very easily. They're cheap though. You can buy a ton of them and replace the ones that get bent. But I've used them with one class and about half of them are pretty bent up now. So these will probably be what we use for the rest of the week. All right, so talk to them about the needle, tell them that this is an eye because they probably do not have that knowledge base. We use yarn. I have them bend the yarn over, pinch it in between their thumb and their index finger, take the eye of the needle. This is why I get a large eye, so it's easier that I do not have to do all of the threading because that would take forever. And then once it starts coming through, pull it through. Now you could have them tie a knot on the end. I don't necessarily find that totally necessary. All right, I just let it hang off the edge. If a student keeps pulling it out of the eye, then by all means have them knot it and they can cut it off at the end. Now for the knot, some of your students might not know how to tie knots. I often will make a video on my camera and my document camera and I will loop it. So it's playing the whole class long, so there's no excuses for I don't know how to tie a knot. You can show them. So the easiest way I feel is probably to double your yarn over and then just do the basic knot so it's thicker. That way they don't have to do 2. Yesterday I was having them do 2 knots and they couldn't get the knot to center on itself. So they had 2 knots that were not doing the job. So just have them fold the yarn over so it's a thicker knot to start with. Now, you could technically do a running stitch if you want to, which a running stitch, if you do not know, is up, down, all the way around. I like to do a whip stitch with my students. So whip stitch is you go through one side and you go out the other side, always. So I'm always gonna go up through and come this way. Pull it all the way, whip the yarn around, push it through, and you want to have the students keep it fairly even. Try to always go at the same depth from the edge. I had one of my students yesterday was going really too close to the edge and he kept tearing his fabric. He was trying so hard. So I just showed him how to go a little bit deeper into the fabric to resist tearing the edge. And they just keep going round and round. I had a couple students that struggled, but I think almost all of them by the end of class had it down pat. So though they may have never done this before, it is a skill that you can take the time to teach them. I think it's a very good skill to have. I grew up in Appalachia, so I knew how to sew since I was like 4. Seriously. But it's a great skill because then they could sew clothes, sew buttons on, all of that, if you teach them not to be afraid of needle and thread. It is a useful skill to have. So you just go around. I tell them not to go thicker than their pinky between each stitch, because if they do, then it's going to be very challenging for the stuffing not to start coming out and for it to come undone. All right, so once they are done, they're going to turn their fabric inside out. Makes it almost like a little change purse. I pre-set out little tufts of polyfill. You could use plastic bags. Just be aware that the writing might show through. So we stuff it. I get my polyfill on sale at secondhand shops and all that. A lot of people, unfortunately, when older people pass away, they have a lot of sewing stuff, and the new generation doesn't know how to use it, so they take it and sell it at like secondhand stores or recycle stores. All right, so just have them kind of even out the stuffing. Now, for this little pouch up here, this is where the hair is going to take place. Now, I let them select up to 4 other colors. You're going to have leftover yarn from your sewing, probably. They can use that, but they can get 4 other colors, or if they want to just use 1 color, it's up to them really how they do it. But that's what's going to sew this up. And how do we do that? Let me show you. So here I'm using the same color that I used to sew it together. All right, so how do we do this? Well, and I have them, when they get their yarn for the hair, I tell them to get about 1 foot. And I have rulers over by my yarn boxes so they can kind of measure it themselves if they like. All right, now the reason I always have my kids fold this over when they put it through the eye is if you start jamming it, you're gonna fray the end, and that is a headache. Trust me. So as soon as it starts coming through, they can pull. Now, I do not have them knot the end on the hair because you're gonna knot it when you put it on the head. So you go through and get the hair about the length that you want. And then that's where you cut it. And then I teach them just to use a, like, tying your shoe kind of tie. So crisscross, go through, pull, crisscross, go through, and pull. Now, if they want to fray it so the hair looks curly, that is absolutely fine. But you're going to fill this up with their hair. It can be as crazy as they want it to be. It could be very matchy-matchy. It's really up to them. Now, at this point, once they're done with the hair, you can give them a Sharpie, and they're going to draw the face on. And they can decide whether they want it to be like a silly face, a mad face, a happy face. However they want to do it. It's up to them. And we're going to get just a little bit of paint. And you want to give them the smallest brush that they can possibly use, because a bigger brush is going to make a bigger mess. Now, the fabric does pretty good at receiving acrylic paint. That's what this is, acrylic paint. Remember to talk to your students about drying their brush out before they get the next color, because they don't want it to be runny. Now, if you have class paint pens, I guess you could do that, but that's expensive, so I do not have that for my class. In the following week, if you need to go back over the black with your Sharpie again to make it stand out more, that is totally okay. But yeah, give them a small brush and tell them to be careful because they can't really fix it if they make a big mistake. They would have to figure out how to make the happy accident work. Now you could embroidery the face on if you want to, but I think it's fun just to pull in some other media. And that is what it looks like. Super cute. Happy sewing. Bye-bye.